Hi, my name is Khalid, and in this video, we'll take a basic Gatsby example and turn it into a contentful powered website. Let's get started. Here we have the Gatsby documentation website, and it's telling us to install first the Gatsby CLI. So let's do that. Once that's done, it's telling us to create a new site, which is using Gatsby and then new Gatsby site. So we hit enter. It's installing all the packages now. Okay, the installation is done. Let's cd to the directory and start Gatsby develop, or there's always this npm script, so we can do npm run develop. Now it's building all the stuff, and once it's done, it will give us the link to our website. So if you go here, this is a very basic Gatsby website and with navigation. Now let's install the Gatsby source Contentful plugin to be able to pull the data from Contentful. So we close our server, and then we do npm install, and then we need to save the Gatsby source Contentful plugin. We hit enter. Once that's done, we need to add our Contentful credential into the Gatsby config. So we go to our Gatsby config.js, and as you can see here, it only has one plugin. So we need to expand this, and then in here, our plugin will be defined as an object because it accepts some configuration option. So first will be resolve, and then here we need to type the name of the plugin, which is Gatsby source Contentful, and in here we need to pass in options. And basically the options are two things. One is the space ID, which we'll get in a minute, and then we have the access token, which is the delivery access token that you need to do in there. So let's guess these credentials. So I go to app.contentful.com, and then in here I select my space. I already have few predefined articles that I create, but I need to go to the API new key and then call it Gatsby website. But here I'm not gonna do this because I already defined my key. So I go here. First I get my space ID, and now I need to get my token, and we should reset. Okay, so now we need to write some Gatsby specific code to be able to create a page for each blog post. To tell Gatsby that we need to create some pages dynamically, we need to export a function called create pages. So we do exports, create pages, and here we'll get an object as a configuration. We are interested in the GraphQL function, and then the bound action creators. So this will be a function. In here, first thing we need to get the create page function from the bound action creators. This we'll use to map a path to an actual React component. And also we will need to return a promise. Since this is a promise-based API, you can also use the callback, but that's you can check that in the documentation. So here our new promise will have the resolve and reject as usual. Now we need to get the path to our blog post template that we will define later. So for now we'll assume that it will be inside of the src and templates folder. So we call it blog post template, and then in here we'll use the path.resolve, and then src templates blog post JS. And here, of course, we need to define the path. It's basically mainly important. Okay, so here we need to call the resolve function. And inside of the resolve function, we'll have the graphical function that will accept our query, and our query basically will be all contentful blog, and then here the limit would be 100, can make it up to 1000. And inside of these all blog contentful, we'll have edges, and inside of edges we'll have node, and in there we'll have access to all our fields that defined in contentful, like slag, ID, and so on. We're only interested in the ID and slag in here. The rest of the data we can pull it on later. So you might be wondering why this is called all contentful blog, where this name is coming from. So if you go to your website, to the Contentful app, excuse me, and then go to your content module, you can see here is there's a blog content type, and there's also author content type. What the Gatsby source Contentful plugin is doing is actually getting all your entries and they group them. It grouped them based on the content type. So here basically we are asking the Gatsby to give us all the entries that are based on this content type, which is blog. So think of it as all contentful, and then here is your content type, your content type ID basically. Okay, so here we change this back to blog. So in here, this graph function returns a promise, so we need to resolve that, and then it will give us a result, and the result will contain an error if something wrong is with the query. So we should check for the errors with result.errors. Here we just simply reject, and we're passing the errors so we can see them in the console. Otherwise, we can just create the pages based on the data. So inside of result, there will be a data object, and inside of the data object, you will need to follow this through. So here will be all contentful blog or all contentful, whatever the content type you're looking for. And then in there, there will be edges. And edges basically are like all the objects that contains our data. So we need to loop through them. So we need to do for each. And then here we get for each edge, we need to create a page. So here we call our create page that we got from the bond action creator. And the create page will accept a function, an object, sorry. So first we need to specify the path for that. And the path for that will be edge.node and then slug. So the slug is the unique string that defines the path for our blog posts. And also we need to map that to a component. And here we just need to provide the path of the component to Gatsby, which is here the blog post template. Blog, yeah, made a spelling mistake in there. Yeah, no, it's right. And also you can passing some data to the component through the context, and this is actually will be useful later when you want to use queries, GraphQL queries inside of that template component. So here we are interested in the slug, so we pass in just the slug because we'll use it inside of that object to get the data related to this blog post. So it will be edge.node.slug. We just need to return here and we hit save. We need to create our blog post template. So we go to src and then we add a new folder called templates, and inside of it we create the file called the blogpost.js. And then if we go here, this is our template component, and then here I need to define my component, and here we will call it blog post component. We don't need these styles, and we don't need the constructor. We don't need all of that. And let's clear up these templating stuff. Okay, so this is a clean component. First, we need to add the prop type to our component. So here, types equal to, we'll get a data. We'll see where this is coming from later. And this will be a prop type dot object what is required, and also here we need to have a query specific to this template, and to tell Gatsby about it we need to export a variable called page query. This will be a template string with the tag GraphQL, and then here we do query blog post query. So this is basically just us defining this function name. It could be anything. So this will accept a slug of type string, and once we get the slug, which we've been passing it through the context in the Gatsby node.js, we call contentful blog. So contentful blog, this is the so all contentful blog is the collection, and this is just getting one entry based on this, based on some filtering we'll be doing. And we will pass the slag, and it should equal to the slag, our slag. And in here, what we'll be getting is title and slag for now. So after we get this data, we need to fill in the render function here. So we can for now just have some div, and inside of the div we display simply for now the title. So maybe we can wrap this in an h1, and then we hit save. And for the title, we will be getting it from the props. So title is actually coming from this dot props dot data dot contentful blog, and then we hit save. So if everything is fine, now we should be able to run this and test our website. So it's building and it failed. You probably were screaming at me because you forgot this new promise in the beginning when we were creating the Gatsby Node.js. So I added that, and our website should build fine right now. So we do npm run develop. And everything is fine. Yeah, now the website, it looks the same, but we actually created pages, and to test this, we can trigger the 404 page of Gatsby, basically by just going to the 404 or adding any random ID. And the good thing in develop mode, when you trigger the 404 by error, Gatsby will show you this page and will tell you all the pages that was created. And as you can see here, we actually created our pages. So if you go here, this is one of the blog posts title, and here again. And then if you go back to Contentful and we check our content, these are the titles. So for example, like, do you know hacks? And it's here. And then we can check also the slag, which is matches this slag. So that's great, but we need to have a list of all the articles on the index page, which is very easy. We just need to change the index JS. So if we go to our source pages, this index.js, let's remove all of this that we don't need. And then if I save, you can see that reflecting here because now we don't have anything. And then we need to define another component in here as a function. We call it a blog post. We'll see why in a moment. And then the blog post will get props. Instead of props, there will be a node object. And then here we simply return the JSX that we need, and to be just an item inside of a list. So an li, and then here we just do link This is a special link object coming from Gatsby, so it knows knows how to map links to component through its route. So we tell it to go to node.slack, and then here for the text it will be node.title, and then we close the link here, and then for our index page it will get data inside of the props, and then inside of the div, we'll have a UL, and then in here what we're gonna do is we do data.all contentful blog dot edges. So it's similar to what we did in the Gatsby Node.js, and then we map all that data to a component, which is basically the blog post component, and then we're passing the node, so it will be edge.node, and then we need just to close this. Yeah, all set. One more thing, we need to have a query for this page to fill in the data. So again, we export the page query, which will be a template string with the tag GraphQL, and then here again, same thing, query, page query, and the page query will be all contentful blog, because here we actually want the collection and not a single entity. And then here we do a filter. The filter will be an object, and inside the filter we need to have the node locale. I'll explain a bit why we need that. And then here the locale will be English US. So why this node locale? The thing is that Contentful, the source plugin for Contentful and Gatsby, it uses the sync endpoint, and all the data is coming in the form of locale, and then you get the field. And here by default my website has only one locale, which is English US, but you can make this super dynamic and maybe get the German one and so on. But for default there's always the English US or the default locale space. If you go to space settings and locales, you can see this is the default locale. It might be different for you, but mainly, but for me, I use English US. So that's why I put in here English US. Okay, what we want to get from there? We have edges. As always, inside of the edges, there's the node. And we need to get the title of the blog post and the slug. So we hit save and go back to our website, and you can see here we have the list of all the blog posts, and here I go back, we have everything. That's how easy to build a website using Gatsby and Contentful, but there's some pieces missing, like parsing Markdown and make it a real progressive web app. We'll see that in the next video. Make sure to subscribe.